what would it be like in your life, in my life, to experience the flow of God? Because we brought the hustle. Now, there are probably a bunch of different pictures in your mind, whether you're a person of faith or not. There are probably a bunch of different pictures in your mind of what this might actually feel like, what this might actually look like. You think the flow is going to have something to do with certain things or certain areas, and another person is going to think completely different areas and different things. But what if we turned our attention today to the scriptures and tried to glean from it what it might be like to experience God's flow in our lives, but more importantly, through our lives. Hustle and flow. If you want to get your notes out of the worship guide, on the way in today, you should have received a worship guide. And inside of there are some sermon notes. And right at the top of those sermon notes is a big old chunk of the Bible. It's a big passage of scripture there from John chapter 6 that we're going to read together. So if you want to get those notes out, you'll be able to follow along. Use that pen there that's provided for you to take some notes today. And you can also turn your attention to the screen to John 6. But in John 6, we're going to read an account from Jesus's public ministry, his life, his work, these 3.5 years where he was out doing some stuff. And at this particular point in Jesus's life, Jesus is about as popular as Jesus will ever be. You know how people constantly talk about approval ratings of, some political figure, and it goes up and it goes down and this kind of stuff. Well, the same could be said of Jesus. There were times where his approval rating among people was very, very high, and then there were some times it was very, very low. The man got crucified, okay? Like it got low sometimes. But at this moment, people loved themselves some Jesus. They loved themselves some Jesus. And so keep that in your mind as we dive into John chapter 6. Here's the way John records it. It says, after this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, and a huge crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. So Jesus went up a mountain and sat down there with his disciples. In other words, there are a bunch of people coming around Jesus because Jesus was super popular because he was healing people. And Jesus said, I'm going to go over here. And he went over there with his disciples. Now, the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near. Therefore, when Jesus looked up, he noticed a huge crowd coming toward him. Jesus was like, I cannot escape these people. He asked Philip, where will we buy bread so that these people can eat? Look at this next line. This is a little important thing. It says that he asked this to test him. Jesus asked this to Philip to test him. For he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii, which worth of bread wouldn't buy enough for them to have a little bit. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? Then Jesus said, have the people sit down. There's plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000, so this is not some small crowd. There's a lot of people around. Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were full, he told his disciples, collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. So they collected them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces from the 5 barley loaves that were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, this really is the prophet who was come into the world. I would like to offer a personal opinion, but it's an opinion I believe that many of us will resonate with. Most of us do not like the ordinary. In fact, culturally, we do not like ordinary, do we? Because ordinary don't get a lot of likes on the gram, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just an ordinary day. This is me and my desk. This is just me in my car. This is just me mowing my lawn. This is just me taking out the trash. This is just me emptying the dishwasher and refilling the dishwasher and emptying it again. This is me folding clothes. Ordinary. Most of us don't like ordinary because ordinary is not appealing to many. Ordinary is not sexy to a lot of people. It's just ordinary. It's just normal. It's ordinary. People ain't trying to beat down the doors of the ordinary restaurant, are they? Ain't nobody trying to book 6 months in advance to get into that ordinary hotel. No, in fact, it's the parts of your house, the parts of your apartment that are ordinary that you sort of despise. It's that new little picture that you just hung that you be taking photos of all the time, being like, hey, because it's not ordinary to you, at least right now. In fact, if you would be honest, the majority of us probably resent the ordinary parts of our lives. We resent it. We don't like it. We wish it wasn't there. We feel that it's unspectacular. We look at other friends or other people and we think, man, if my life could just go from high to high to high like theirs does, if I could just go from awesome event to vacation like they do, it would be unbelievable. But my life isn't like that. My life is ordinary. I just go to class. I just go to school. I just go to work. I just take the kids everywhere they need to go. You should put taxi. I'm going to get an Uber sticker, but just say Uber for my family because that's what I do. I just take my family everywhere. Everywhere. It's just what I am. I'm like an Uber that doesn't get paid near as good as an Uber driver. Like, that's me. It's just ordinary. It's just fix the toilet because the toilet's what decided to break this week. It's ordinary. Ordinary. And a lot of us overlook the power of the ordinary. But I need you to understand something about the way that God operates in this idea of hustle and flow. And not just in this idea of hustle and flow, but in every area of your life. That God's flow often starts in the ordinary. The flow that God brings, that flow that sounds so good to experience. Oh, I would love to experience God's flow in my life. I'd love to see his flow in everything I do, in my work and in my family. I'd love to experience his flow. Well, God's flow often starts in the ordinary. You know, this story here in John chapter 6 is full of ordinary. It's full of ordinary. It is chock full of just normal people doing normal stuff. But yet, it's extraordinary. I don't know if you know this about this particular miracle that Jesus does, but this miracle is a unique miracle. It's a miracle when you feed a whole bunch of people with very little. It's a miracle. And Jesus did a lot of miracles. In fact, John, who wrote this that we read today, at the end of his writing in John chapter 20, there at the very end, he actually makes note of the fact that if he were to write down, this is John, write down everything that Jesus taught and everything that he saw Jesus do, that literally there aren't enough books in the world to contain everything that Jesus did. Jesus did a whole lot of stuff, but here's what's extraordinary about this. Of all these miracles that Jesus did, there is only one miracle that is found in the New Testament that was recorded by all four of what we call the gospel writers. All four of the people who took it upon themselves to explain to others about the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. There were a lot of miracles, a lot of blind eyes getting open, a lot of people getting raised from the dead, a lot of stuff Jesus did, a lot of sicknesses being healed. There was only one miracle that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all took it upon themselves to make sure they included in their writing. And it was this one. It's extraordinary, but it's ordinary. Jesus was just doing what he did on a normal day. This was an ordinary day for Jesus. Remember, he's popular at this time. So a lot of people are going wherever he goes. TMZ in Jerusalem, they just following him everywhere. No matter where he go, Galilee, Nazareth, they just following him, right? He's got a crowd. And everywhere Jesus goes, he has this crowd. So that's normal to him. Jesus was just teaching and doing and healing. This was normal for him in his ministry. Jesus is got his disciples around, and his disciples don't quite get what Jesus is trying to do. That is normal. It was normal. There was a normal need among these people. They were hungry. They had been with Jesus for a while. Jesus had been teaching and healing. They had been seeing all this. And Jesus tried to get away, and they followed Jesus. And so they had found themselves toward the end of the day, and they were hungry. Not hungry like I skipped lunch to follow Jesus, but hungry. Hippos. Hungry, you know? Like they were hungry like many of us don't understand. See, hunger was a normal part of life in that day. You very rarely ate till you were full. That's why it's so profound that John decides to record in here that all these people ate, and they didn't eat the way they normally ate. They actually ate until they were like, I can't have any more. No, I can't eat one more chicken leg. No, I cannot. No, not one more fish sandwich. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm done. Ordinary. There was an ordinary boy there who had an ordinary lunch. His 5 loaves, 2 fish were just a very common sort of lunch that someone would have in that day. Ordinary. In fact, this boy may have had this lunch and brought it for himself, or he may have had this lunch and brought it to be able to sell to other people. This was a very common thing. You knew a lot of people around. You would take very lunches like this and kind of be like the original food truck and run around and be like, who wants this? It's $5. You know, come on, give me. I got your lunch right here. That was ordinary. It was ordinary even for him to take his lunch and offer it to Jesus. But what was extraordinary was the faith that he had that Jesus could do something through it. Whole lot of ordinary. One little bit of extraordinary. What was extraordinary here was that this little boy had enough faith to believe that God could do something through what was very ordinary to him. See, this story, write this down, is a story of ordinary plus faith. Now, don't be crossing out that plus sign. We need it. Ordinary plus faith. Not ordinary faith. If somebody's ever talked to you about ordinary faith, they was a lie, because no faith is ordinary. This was an ordinary action. It was an ordinary situation. But what was added to it was this thing called faith. This belief that maybe somehow this Jesus who's healing people, this Jesus who we believe is God here among us in this moment, this boy had faith enough to believe that maybe he can do something through this ordinary. This ordinary thing that I have. You know, that's what we all have in common. Every one of us. No matter how old you are, how young you are, no matter how much money you make, no matter how much money you ain't make, you know? It doesn't matter the color of your skin, doesn't matter your background, where you grew up, what you're doing, whether you're upperly mobile or down and out. It does not matter. Here's what's true about all of us. We all carry something that we look at as ordinary. We all have our own lunch. We walk through this life carrying something that's ordinary. Just like this boy did. He carried his lunch. I feel like he carried it in a paper sack, because I carried my lunch in a paper sack. A big paper sack, by the way. Lunch was a significant thing in my childhood, as you can tell. He carried his lunch. And there was nothing special about his lunch. There was nothing special about him even offering his lunch. What was special is about what God could do through his ordinary. See, all of us today have a lunch. We have something ordinary to us. It's ordinary. It's so accustomed to us that for some of us, we don't even recognize that we carry it anymore. See, some of us have incredible influence. Like, people just like you. They do. There's some of you in here that people just like you. Maybe you're the type, you ain't never met a stranger and you think it's just, man, everybody just likes me. Can I tell you that is not normal? I could point out some people that ain't nobody like, you know? But you think that everybody just likes everybody. And no, you actually have been graced by God with extraordinary influence. It's your lunch. Some of you have been given abilities administratively to figure out problems, to organize things. And I mean, your folders have folders organized in them. You know what I'm saying? You ain't ever lost nothing because it's always on file. It's always in a drawer it's supposed to be in, because you have this gift of keeping things organized. And you think everybody is like that. The problem is you ain't ever been to nobody else's house because ain't nobody else like that. It's your lunch. Some of you've been gifted relationally. You've been gifted with the work that you do, in the place that you're in. You've been gifted with talent. Some of you can, watch me, you can actually hang pictures on the wall that don't fall. Gifted. It's just your lunch. It's this ordinary thing that you carry around that, to be quite honest, you've probably not even noticed that you have with you anymore. It may be a talent. It may be a resource. It may be a connection. It may be an understanding. It may be a perspective. It may be a knowledge. It may be a pain from your past that God has healed you of. But yet your perspective on that has brought so much wisdom and so much empathy and so much compassion on the inside of you. It has changed you. And now it's the lunch that you carry. It's normal to you. The problem is that most of us do not see how God could use this, because it's just normal. We expect God to bring his flow, and his flow is just it's gonna come out of nowhere, and it's gonna be incredible, and God's gonna bless, and God's gonna do, and then once he does that, I'll just start following along. That is not how this works. It is hustle and flow. We do what we can. We offer what we can offer. We bring what we have, and we watch God do what only he can do. And that's where faith comes in, because it takes faith to believe that God can use your ordinary. See, if you saw that thing in you that you thought was extraordinary, if you saw it's like, oh, look at me. Oh, look what I can do. If you saw it that way, you'll be like, yes, God's going to use this. And people that are like that are what we call conceited. It's true. The problem is God doesn't need something extraordinary in you to use. He is extraordinary. What he needs is your ordinary. What he needs is your lunch. Your lunch. That seemingly insignificant thing to you. See, it's so easy for us to overlook the significance of what's normal to us. That's why some people think that, well, I probably am not in the place in life where me giving financially really matters because I'm a student. I just work a part-time job, and so God probably can't do a whole lot if I were to give, so I just won't give. No, it's not like that. Or you may think, well, you know what? I'm not really as talented as the other people that do this, so I'm just going to wait till my talent really develops, and then once it really develops, then I'll start using it for God. No. No, it's your lunch. It's what you have right now. And what God does is this. You can write this down if you're taking notes today. That God meets extraordinary needs through ordinary means. God meets extraordinary needs through ordinary means. Can I recount for you what's going on in our little story here? Because Jesus has this massive crowd around him. I know the scriptures say that there were 5,000 men, but it says men on purpose, because in that day they would have only counted the men. Sorry, everybody else, that's the way it worked. We're working on changing this, but that's what they did. But in totality, there would have been 15 to probably 20,000 people gathered around Jesus, women and children and the like, people who would have been overlooked in the count. There was a massive group of people there. And they're all gathering around Jesus, and Jesus sees this as an opportunity, not necessarily to do another miracle, but to test the faith of his disciples, to see where their faith is at. Do you remember how this all came about? We just read it like 14 minutes ago. We read it. It says that Jesus, he actually asked this question to test their faith. He already knew what he was going to do. He just wanted to see if they were picking up what he was putting down yet. You know what I'm saying? because he had been teaching and he had been healing and he had been doing all of this stuff. And he's like, I wonder if my disciples get it yet. I wonder if there's anybody here that actually gets what I'm trying to say. If they actually get who I am. If they actually get what I want to do through them. And so Jesus says, hey, we need to feed these people. And there are three different responses to Jesus's request. Three different responses to this really gigantic need. And I'd love for you to write these down today because these three responses really are the options that we have when God tells us, I want you to get involved in fixing something serious around you. I want you to be a part of bringing this to pass. I want you to experience my flow through you. So I'm going to ask you to do something towards a need, towards a problem, towards a situation that is massive. I got 20,000 hungry people and I want you to feed them. So how do we respond? Some people respond like Philip, and they say this, you can write this down. We can't afford this. Isn't that what Philip said? He said, Jesus, I'm good at math. Don't know if you took math. Don't know if you've been like in Bible college this whole time studying the scriptures, and maybe y'all forgot about adding and subtracting. But let me tell you, I'm gonna just do a quick math on this, and it would take more money than someone would make working 2/3 of a year to feed all these people. So maybe in our vernacular, what is that? 30,000, 40,000, 20,000. It'd take a lot of money. And all that money, we could go to every Kroger, every Aldi, every Superlow, every Cash Saver, every Saver. We could buy all that we could get for these people. And we could only pass out a crumb to them. Jesus, this costs too much. You know, sometimes when God speaks to you about a need he wants you to get involved in, that some of us, that's what we run to. We run to this and we say, God, I can't afford this. And yes, for some of us, we exonerate ourselves and we say, I can't afford this financially. It doesn't work with my budget. But can I tell you, that's not the only thing that afford really speaks to. It really speaks to anything that we feel like we have, and it's in a diminishing sort of state. So some people, God speaks to you about being generous financially. You say, God, I can't afford this. God speaks to you about advancing his vision of his church. He speaks to you about investing in the future, reaching other people. You say, God, I can't afford this. But some people don't just speak it to money. Some people speak it to time. God, I can't afford the time it would take to serve. God, I can't afford the time it would take for me to connect with other people in community. I can't afford this. I'm too busy. The only problem is we wonder then 6 months later why we feel so lonely. We wonder why when the vision is moving forward, but we haven't invested in the vision, we're like, I wonder why they're so passionate about it, I'm not. Because we thought we couldn't afford to be a part. I can't afford this. I don't have the time for this. So, sometimes even as parents do this. I've told you many times, I don't really give a whole lot of parenting advice because I don't really know if I'm doing a good job. But I'll tell you one thing I do a good job of, and it's not because I'm a pastor, but I bring my son to church. I bring my son to church. You know why? Because when I was a kid, nobody brought me. I brought myself to church. You don't believe me? I got receipts. I do. I have the key. Probably don't work anymore because they don't even have, the church doesn't even exist anymore, but the building's still there. But I have a key that was given to me when I was 15 years old because I used to get to church on Sunday morning before the pastor got there and before the youth pastor got there and before the worship leader and the choir and all of them got there. And I would get there early because that was the only way I was getting to church. But yet, as parents, sometimes we prioritize every tutor Every sport, and I love tutors. Make them grades. I love sports. Believe me, you get around me, you know I bleed some sports. Like, let's go. Those are great things. But too often we use the excuse of affordability when it comes to getting our kids in God's house consistently. And you say, we just ain't got the time. We as a busy family. But what if God says, I want to do something, watch me, extraordinary. Through something very ordinary, you bringing your kids and placing them in my house. Man, I ain't got time to do this like I need to do this. Number 2, write this down. We can't afford this. The second response was, we can't handle this. That's what Andrew said. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, he said, look, there's a boy and he's got 5 loaves and 2 fishes, but what are they among so many? In other words, my capacity, my means cannot handle this vision that you have, Jesus. Jesus, you got big vision. You want to feed 20,000 people. That's wonderful. Who gonna cook? Because we ain't got that. We can't handle this. But I'm here to let you know that the way God grows your capacity is by you taking what you have and saying, God, this is all I got. If you can use this for your kingdom, if you can use this, if you can grow this, then it is yours. But often we never get to that spot because we say, God, I can't handle this. God, I can't handle that pressure. God, I can't handle that role. God, I can't handle this. When there is a third response that is a remarkable response, and it's the response of this boy who looked at his lunch, and when there was an extraordinary need, he looked at what he brought maybe to eat. He looked at what he brought maybe to sell. And he said, well, I can't consume this. See, the normal thing for him would have been to consume it. Nothing wrong with eating the lunch that you brought. Nothing wrong with that. This boy could have snuck off into a little corner, opened up his little sack, been like, I hope nobody sees me. them fish smell good. Eat real quick, and got into his lunch. And nobody would have known. Nobody would have thought anything of him because he just eaten his lunch. Or maybe he brought it to sell. Maybe he's the OG food truck. And he's just like, who wants this? I know y'all hungry. I think the price just went up on it because I know y'all hungry. He could have done that. But he didn't. He looked at what was normal for him, this little lunch. This little lunch that maybe he had carried out many, many days. Maybe his mom was like I am with my son. I pack my son the exact same thing every time I got to pack a lunch. There's no variety in my house. It's like you are getting a lunch, you guarantee what's in there. And if we ain't got one of those, guess what? You just short. Like you were getting the same thing every time. Maybe he was familiar with what was in here. Maybe this is what he always brought out to sell. This is what he always brought. Maybe he was the dude that they knew they could get them barley loaves and them little minced fish from and be like, yeah, I like my guy. My guy has a good lunch whenever there's a big crowd around. But he looked at his normal and he said, I can't consume this. Maybe this is something Jesus can use. You see, too many people choose to consume what they have because they think it's not very much in light of the need. They choose to consume their lunch because they think there ain't no way this can handle that. So I'll just consume it. Rather than realizing this might be something God could work through. See, it is when you and when I actually take what's in our hand and we place it in Jesus' hands that we begin to experience the flow. Let me clear up this flow for you. You see, the flow isn't what God gets to you. It's what God gets through you. See, God did not give you that talent just so you could be talented. Nothing wrong with you being talented, but he didn't get it to you so you could be talented. He got it to you so that he could do something through your talent for the honor of his name. The reason he has blessed you with a job where you can provide for your family and you have more than enough is not just so you can follow your American dream and consume more and more and more. It's so that you can leverage what he has brought to you for the honor of his name. The reason he gave you influence is not just so you could be popular. It's not just so you could get hundreds and even thousands of likes and maybe one day find yourself with a blue check next to your name and be an influencer on Instagram. It is not for that. There is nothing wrong with that, but it is not for that. It is so that you can leverage your influence for the honor of his name. And he wants to do all that by you taking your lunch and placing it in his hands. By you saying, God, this is all I got. But if you can do something with that, do it. See, there's an aspect to this story that I would like to draw your attention to for these last few moments that we have together. And to be quite honest, it's an aspect of this story that maybe you haven't spent much time pondering. Maybe you've never heard this story before, and that's fine. I'd love for you to think just for a moment, though, not about Jesus, not about Philip, not about Andrew, not about all the people that was there eating, but if you thought for a moment what it was like to be that little boy. That little boy who took his lunch and gave it to Jesus. That little boy who knew, I know what's in there. And he said, God, if you can use it, use it. And then he stepped back to the side and watched God do what only God could do. And he saw Jesus take his lunch and bless it, break it, and then begin to serve people group by group. You know, other writers, Mark and Matthew and Luke, tell us that Jesus, because Jesus was so organized, would actually break people into small groups. So there was like a group of 50 and 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 a group of 50, on and on and on again. And the boy knew what was in his lunch. And he watched Jesus go over to the first group of 50 and take his lunch and serve all these people. And he's like, whoa, that went further than I thought. And then he goes to the second group of 50 and he serves all these people. And he's like, and they got food too? And then he goes to the next group and the next group and the next group and the next group. And all of a sudden, this boy is just sitting there. And what do you think he felt when he realized that everyone here has eaten because I gave my lunch? What do you think he felt when he saw everyone there? Do you remember what John said at the end of this? Everyone there began to believe that Jesus was who he said he was. Not because Jesus did something else all by himself, but because Jesus used something ordinary that the boy gave. My God. I think he sat there and he was full of awe, full of wonder, because he knew what was in that bag. He knew that he had been thinking for the last couple of hours about getting a little nibble on one of them little barley loaves, but he didn't. I think he probably, I don't know if he was a crier or not, but I bet tears were in his eyes, watching all these people be served, all these people be fed through him offering his lunch. You know what's sad? Is a lot of people never experience what this boy experienced. And if you've never experienced what this boy experienced, can I tell you something? It's not because God can't move through you, but it's because you've not placed your lunch in his hands. See, some of you have tricked yourself. You've allowed the enemy to deceive you. You think, well, the reason that God hasn't done anything through me like that is because God must be mad at me. And there was that one time when I was 14 and God must just be holding that against me, or God's not good like people say he is. What? What if maybe God is just waiting for you to take what you've been overlooking, take what's so ordinary to you, and place it in his hands and say, God, if you can do anything through this, do it. God, I give you my influence. God, I give you my perspective. God, I give you my resources. God, I give you my talent. God, I give you this season of my life. This season of my life, I have more time. And God, I give this to you. If there's something you want me to do, if there's something I can do for the honor of your name, then do it. God, I give it to you. God, I give you this year. I give you this month. I give you this day. God, I give it to you. It's not ordinary in your eyes. It is the fuel. It is the soil with which you birth something extraordinary. So God, I place it in your hands. And when you place it in his hands and you begin to see God do what you know there's no way could ever happen through what you gave him, you have experienced the flow. Not because lunch came to you, but because you took your lunch and served it. See, the flow is not something God is simply trying to get to you. God did not create you to be a lake. He created you to be a river. And he's going to continue to bring through you as he can trust that what he brings to you will pass through you. But it's not going to get harbored up. It's not going to get dammed up in the end. And all of a sudden I bring to them, but they just hold on to themselves. No. God wants you to look at what he's placed in your hands and say, God, do something with that. Do something with that. And if you can, I give it to you. That's what this boy did. And that's why this boy looked around and saw 20,000 people being fed. Because he gave what was in his hands. See, that's the way it works with God. Little becomes much in his hands. Little becomes much in his hands. So often we try to do things on our own and in our own power and through our own ability and our own understanding and our own figuring it out. And no. When we place what we have in his hands, our little becomes much. God, I don't have a ton of influence, but I give it to you. And I'm gonna use the influence you've given me to tell people about you and to point people to you and to invite people to you. I'm gonna use it, God. God, I don't even feel like I'm all that wealthy. I don't feel like I'm all that compensated with money on money. But God, I'm gonna faithfully put you first. And I just believe that you're gonna do something through that. God, I have some time. God, my body is strong in this season, so I'm going to serve. And God, I don't know what you could do through it, but I'm going to give it to you. You know, there are people in this room who've experienced that because they give of themselves, because they take their little and go, God, if you could use this little as I lead this group, maybe to help somebody's faith grow, maybe to help somebody find you for the first time, then God, I give it to you. They do this as they maybe step out of what's comfortable for them and go, God, I'm going to lead people in worship. God, I'm going to use the talent you've given me. Sometimes I don't feel very talented, but God, I'm going to use it. And then they hear of a song they led. They hear of their participation being something that inspired people, that brought people closer to God. And they're like, God, you did that through me? People who say, I'll come early. I'll stay late on a Sunday. I'll serve when we need backpacks for kids. Okay, I'll give to that. We need people to lead groups. I'll take what little I have. I'll do it. I'll place it in your hands. And then when they see what God does through that, something happens on the inside that cannot happen without taking your lunch and placing it in his hands. See, here's what I know about God. God will do the extraordinary if you and if we will do the ordinary. Do you have faith to do the ordinary? Do you have faith to take the ordinary parts of your life and say, God, I give that to you? It's ordinary. It's not special, but if you can do something through it, God, it's yours.